We drove through those remnants of Ida. It was a mess. What is that?
Well, throughout the Northeast, they're getting hammered down. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the headline. It's a shame the US Open is just a flooded washout.
Terrible.
Where's the US Open?
Flushing, Queens, New York.
Ah,
And this, yep. They evacuated the press box because it's so high up. I have friends covering there and they just got everybody out. It was bad last night.
Okay, it's 1:30. Shall we begin? Linelda, would you do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Shoemaker isn't here today. Commissioner David,
Present.
Commissioner Gossick-Seidman,
Here by Zoom. Hi.
hi. Vice Mayor Moore,
Present.
Mayor Hillman,
Present.
Town Manager Labadie,
present.
and Town Attorney Trisivia.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll do a pledge of allegiance, and while we're standing, perhaps a moment of silence for the 13 service people that we lost and for all those that are still in Afghanistan trying to get out.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Nelda, do we have any public comments?
There are no pre-registered public comments today.
Okay, then we'll close the public comment section and we'll move right into insurance. And I'll turn this over to Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. As you were aware and you have in your packet and some information I provided earlier, the commission had asked the vice mayor to take a look at our insurance products and compare it to what we have, proper coverage. And this was kind of a secondary project with the fund balance work that she was doing. So I gave her a contact that provides similar products under a public trust. She contacted Ms. Martin with PRIA and got a proposal. So that proposal that you see here is a very cost-effective proposal. Offers a couple other items that extended coverage. So we bring it back for the commission for consideration. October 1 is our fiscal year, and it's also our insured year. So if the commission is interested in moving forward, we would then take the next steps based on action of the commission to put the proposal into place. I did go through our purchasing policy, and you're allowed to do this in this fashion, so long as there's commission action to go with the proposal on insurance products. So we had asked Ms. Martin to come today to kind of walk you through, answer any questions, go over the proposal, the products, the cost, and kind of leave it to the commission if you're comfortable to move forward. But again, as you can see, there's a table in front of you, and then from the cover memo, we're talking about a $75,000 savings. So it's something that we should give a good look at in consideration.
Sure. Would you come to the podium, please? Thank you. Got to turn it on.
Okay,
There we go.
there we go. Did you hear the first part? I just, Thank you for having
We
me.
did, but I don't think the people that are watching.
I see. Okay, very good. I'm Michelle Martin from Public Risk Insurance Advisors, and thank you for having us here, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Mr. Labadie, and rest of the commission. We appreciate the opportunity to explain our approach. I have with me here today, there's two people in the audience, Kurt Heyman and Welton Cadwell. They are with the Preferred Governmental Insurance Trust. And so between the three of us, we should be able to answer any questions you may have. Hopefully, I've got a short PowerPoint presentation just to kind of go through from the beginning to explain a little bit of our background and then talk about your program and any questions that you may have. Do you have any questions to start out with?
Anybody? Nope. Okay, it's all yours.
All right, very good. So I kind of did some introductions here. I will tell you that the three of us that are here have multiple years of experience. And so you're not dealing with any rookies with this presentation and this program. Just got a little overview of the presentation. PRIA is a subsidiary of Brown and Brown, Inc. If you all are familiar with them, we are an international company. We were started in Florida in 1939, actually in Daytona Beach. That's where our headquarters is today. That's where I am from. And I've been with the company for over 30 years in various capacities. And I've focused solely in governmental insurance for over 15 years now. We have 11,000 employees over most of the United States. We have London office, Bermuda, and a couple of other of those islands that provide insurance and financial services. We have about 2,500 employees here in Florida. And we are a Florida corporation. PRIA is a subsidiary that solely deals with public entities. So all we do in my office is we are a brokerage. We provide services for cities, counties, school boards, and special taxing districts in the state of Florida only. We have over 200 customers, and we have been solely working with public entities for over 30 years. Here we're the largest public entity brokerage in the state of Florida. Clients include 75 Florida cities. Some of those in this area, what I'll call Tri-County, we've got Atlantis, Jupiter, and Pahokee. In Palm Beach County, we also insure city of Weston, Coconut Creek, Bal Harbor Village, Bay Harbor Islands, and then we go all the way up to the cities of Fort Lauderdale, the city of Miami. We also do work for the state of Florida. If you call any of these, or if you know anyone at any of these cities, I welcome you to contact them as a reference for our services. We are very, very proud to fulfill services for our clients and be very consistent. Many of these clients we've had for over 10 years because we're able to deliver each and every year. It's not just coming in for the first year and then we kind of let you go. We follow you through, follow your changes within your entity and make sure you've got the best insurance product to cover your risk. So a couple of things I wanted to point out before we get into more specifics about why we're different than your current situation. You're currently buying a direct product from the League of Cities, which is a wonderful organization. They have a product. I think many times the way that you'll see them on the insurance side is going to be through, you know, an online portal where you're going to have to enter in your changes. You're going to get a emailed renewal. We approach that very differently in that we are an independent agent and we work for the city. We don't work for Preferred Governmental Insurance Trust, which is the product that we are proposing. So these guys, we're partners. However, they work for Preferred Governmental Insurance Trust and I work for you. And so what you have there is very powerful because we are your advocate 365 days a year. So not just at renewal time, but during the year as well. So you've got some changes that are coming up in your organization. I believe that you're going to, or you already have added the administrative side of the fire operation, which is currently contracted out. And so we want to make sure that as you add on firefighters, that those are getting properly covered. So for example, there's several statutory benefits that firefighters and police officers get, but firefighters in particular. And so we want to make sure that those are insured or that you know of the exposure of those as these personnel come in on your payroll. Flood expertise. So in fact, we had an internal meeting this morning and within PREA, we have, I think, close to 1,000 NFIP flood policies that we manage. And then the Brown and Brown organization and our subsidiaries, we have so much NFIP flood business that we have an individual that sits in on the congressional hearings at the FEMA level. And so we are at the, you know, the edge of everything that is going on with the NFIP. We currently placed 5 NFIP policies for you now due to that expertise. I do want to let you know, if you're not aware of it, there are some changes coming with the NFIP program, and those are going to be effective on October 1st. And that's not just going to affect your policies, but also your community policies. The FEMA NFIP, as you may know, has been in a little bit of a deficit for over a decade now. And so there's been some much needed changes in their structure. So they're changing their rating process. So what we're going to do for you, for your flood policies coming up, you've got 3 of them that renew in January and 2 that are going to be renewing in October. And so we're going to give you the option of keeping the same rating that you have or choosing the new rating, what they're calling 2.0. So you're going to have 1.0 or 2.0, and we'll choose whichever, in this case, is going to be the best price because the coverage is going to be similar. But there will be a change on your next renewal also. So I just want to let you know that that's coming up. With the program that we have provided on the property and liability and workers' compensation package. So what we've proposed is property, general liability, crime, public officials liability, employment practices liability, cyber liability, deadly weapon, workers' compensation. That is in one policy, which we call a package policy. That's with Preferred Governmental Insurance Trust. And then Preferred Governmental Insurance Trust has also quoted the workers' compensation. So to address the diamond in the middle, We have quoted that at a lower premium than you're paying currently. We did not look at the FMIT's renewal quote. This was a legitimate process here. And we've quoted a lower premium and also found several pretty good coverage advantages for you in addition to that. And going back to the independent agent and the advocate for the city, those coverage advantages, some of them came just because I saw them and asked for them. So, I don't know that preferred, that's not what they do. They rely on us agents to do that. They're not going to just offer you, oh, here's some coverage enhancement. So, again, that's the power of having a broker that works for the city. With that preferred program comes some really great risk management resources, which includes training. It includes some safety incentive money. The preferred actually has improved their offerings on the safety resources every single year for its members. And so I think you'll find I believe it to be the broadest in the industry. So I think there's more resources provided by this program than by the FMIT or anybody else in the industry. And then as far as one of the questions I was asked in the process was about the financials. I believe those are included in your packet. If you have any questions about those, we can get into that. But I do want to let you know from a Brown and Brown perspective, I'm not allowed to bring you a product that has not been fully vetted by our corporate security committee. Now, I will tell you, here's a legal disclosure. We can't predict the financial future of anything, but we have a committee that provides oversight to make sure that anything that I offer you is of the highest financial stability that we know of today. And so that security committee, I think, is another added value for the city. These are just some highlights about preferred before we get into the coverages. I already talked about financial strength. They do use an agency distribution. There is a claim service that comes along with the program. So that's not an additional service for you. We do provide they do provide property appraisals as well. And so every so often, this is done a little bit differently than your current provider. Preferred actually contracts with a national third-party property appraisal vendor. So this is a third party that has, a database and collects underwriting data. And I believe that it is more, it's more robust than what you get from your current provider. And so we'll make sure that your property valuations are current every few years, which is very important. And then I think I mentioned earlier, there's a $5,000 safety incentive. So if you spend $10,000, like I can say, this maybe you did in 2020, but like these partitions are personal protective equipment, for lack of a better term. If you spent $10,000 on sanitizing machines or any kind of COVID protection, then Preferred will reimburse you $5,000 of that 10. So it's a 50% matching up to $5,000. And one other thing I'll mention from this slide is on the claims handling, there are for your police and soon to be fire exposure for on duty. We have special cardiac nurses, cardiac care nurses, and also PSTD nurses. So if there's any kind of situation with that, we want to be sure that your first responders are getting the best care. And for those of you who are not aware, there are special workers' compensation coverage for certain cardiac events that are incurred by first responders. So those are treated very differently than, if you threw your back out, or, some of the other kind of common injuries that we would see in workers' compensation. All right. Here's some more interesting stuff. So from a very high level perspective, I did some side-by-side boxes here, and on the left side is your current program, and on the right side is what we are proposing. And I wanted to highlight just a couple of coverage advantages and then talk about the premium a little bit. So from my perspective, and I fancy myself a risk manager, there's a couple of big exposures. One is contractual liability, which is handled, by your city, or town attorney. The other one is the cyber liability. And this to me is an exposure that unfortunately we all face. And it is, it's not determinable. We don't know where the next thing is coming from on the cyber liability. Preferred has done an excellent job of addressing the exposure for their members. And I believe as early as 2015 or 2014 started providing coverage within their package. It started out at, when we did not perceive and really didn't have an exposure back there, but we knew it was emerging. We knew it was coming down the pipe. They provided the highest limits in the industry for the public entities. And now they're providing, and I'm proposing for 10/1/21, a $2 million limit with a $25,000 deductible versus your expiring coverage with $1 million limit. So we're doubling the coverage, and a $35,000 deductible. And also within that coverage, there is, they call it fraudulent instruction or social engineering. We unfortunately have seen many of these claims where you get a email from Mr. Labadie that's not Mr. Labadie to your finance director to please wire, $100,000, and it needs to be done right away because I'm getting on a plane. We've all heard that one. Your current coverage has a $100,000 limit for that. We have a $250,000 limit. So, there's some sublimit advantages there. And also, I don't know if this is fortunate or unfortunate. I have been through a couple of cyber claims, and the response that Preferred has when there is an incident, I tell my clients, call my cell phone. If you think you have something going on, just call my cell phone. And within an hour, I'll have a team of people on the phone with you, attorneys, claims specialists, forensics, to try to get in front of it and solve the problem as inexpensively and with as little disruption as possible. And the automobile liability, your current program has $1,000 deductible, and our program proposed has no deductible. Preferred was also the first carrier to introduce the deadly weapon active shooter coverage into the package program, I'm proud to say, and we are providing $1 million limit for that. There's no deductible for that. And what that does is if there's an event where somebody's on your property and they come in with under certain, there's going to be certain circumstances that are covered, but they come in with the intent to harm or kill individuals on your property, then this covers some medical expense, third-party liability, crisis management services, such as counseling services. So this is a really, unfortunately, this has become a part of any robust risk management insurance programs now. So this is a very good coverage and no deductibles. Now, our premium is what we're presenting for the coverages I outlined, and I'll go over this in detail in just a second. Is $286,373. The expiring was 318, and I believe that the town manager has provided you with further comparison to what your renewal is. So I think there's a pretty significant difference on the premium between an increase, a consecutive increase that you've received. I looked back at some historical information, and your premium with your current provider in 2017 was just under $260,000. And I believe what they've quoted for this year is $361,000, which is a 45% increase, over $100,000 over those few years. So that's a pretty hefty increase. I will commit to you, and Preferred commits to you. They really, one of their objectives is to try to keep your premiums stable. There are conditions in the marketplace. There are claims, individual member claims. There's a myriad of reasons why insurance premiums go up. By the way, how did everybody's homeowners do this year? Mine doubled. I told my agent, I can't afford this. So, there's definitely some real challenges going on in the marketplace. So we can't promise you that, that premium will stay flat, but I can tell you that every year I talk to my underwriter at Preferred, and they say they want to increase, and they're like, why? No, they don't deserve it. So you get somebody negotiating on your behalf. So you're not going to see these huge increases like this over, the next 5 years. We try to keep it as stable as possible. There's a lot of little numbers on this, and I don't know if you want to go through and talk about any kind of specific coverage, but this would allow us to do that.
I guess, Michelle, I have a question. Are there any coverages that are reduced in your program compared to our current program, or are there any retentions that are increased?
No.
No.
Now, and I think I had spoken to Mr. Labadie, and there's always going to be little differences between insurance programs, but as far as I was able to tell from the big picture, based on looking at your current policies, I did not identify any gaps that moving the insurance would create for you. And in fact, I think we've plugged some that are there.
And, one that's on top of mine too is the windstorm coverage. So the windstorm coverage is the same with what as far as limits and deductibles is the same under your program compared to the current.
Yeah, so let me address that. So we do have a minimum hurricane deductible of $25,000, which frankly is nothing. So on both programs, you're going to be subject to a 5% per item that's on your property schedule, but it's subject to $25,000 minimum. And I do not believe your current program has a minimum.
And it's a one minimum that's applied across, right? It's not applied.
That's right.
Per.
That's right. I have never, ever, I've been through, and, you might want to speak to this too, to verify it, because I don't represent 100% of Preferred's members either. But my Preferred clients, that has never been an issue, nor has it ever been a concern of mine, because, the 5% is the 5%.
Right.
Yeah, I have a
Let me
question.
just verify what you just said. It's one time or it's per event?
It would be per event.
Yeah. not
Per
one
event,
time.
but not
event.
per property, because
Per
if you look at our
property.
current policy, we have town hall has a certain value, and that, And so that, there's a 5% deductible for that. All the different pieces of
Libraries,
property we
separate.
have, there's a schedule and the value associated with that item. So we have a hurricane, and I think what Michelle is saying is, you're gonna have to meet at least a minimum $25,000 coverage, but she's saying we're gonna blow through that you have this $5,000 deductible. So it's not on top of, right?
That's correct.
Okay,
That's
it's not
correct.
stacked.
Yeah, you have to erode the
Right,
minimum to get claim payment back.
Well, the big number is the 5%.
right.
And it's
That's
the
our-
aggregate of all properties.
And that is what is the same between our current policy and what Michelle
Yeah.
is proposing.
Okay, so if all of our buildings were damaged, it would be a 5% deductible just once. It
One
wouldn't-
time.
Wouldn't be each one separately.
Well, that's correct. That's correct. So if everything went away here, you've got about $26 million of insured assets. And so that's going to be about a $1.3 million deductible. You're over 25,000. Anything over 1.3 million, you get payment for.
But
Also,
Go ahead, sorry.
what are the scheduled covered properties? I mean, because I started reading through this and it was a term that was thrown out and I don't know what that is.
Well, and just, I don't have a display of that. I can certainly provide that to you on an email if you would like to see that, but it's going to be, the library is scheduled. The town hall is scheduled, the fire station is scheduled, the water structures are scheduled.
Okay.
So they're all
and
separate line items.
What about streets? Because we own some of the streets in town.
Yeah, the streets for property coverage are not covered assets. And could you cover them? Maybe. Does anybody do it? No. It would be very expensive, and not worth it.
But you do cover removal of tree limbs and whatever after a hurricane? Because
Well-
that can be very expensive to clean up all of that.
Well, there's a coverage under the property called debris removal.
Mhm.
And what that is really focused on is if, let's say this building was damaged and you had to, let's say again, I hate using these examples, but let's say the roof blew off. And so you have to get a contractor to come in and remove the debris from the covered building. That's really what the debris removal is more focused towards. You would have perhaps some landscaping coverage if it was on your property, like if you had stuff in your parking lot that looked like it may have come from this location. But if it does not cover, the street out front within city limits, clearing those, that is absolutely that's a FEMA issue. And that is really a disaster preparedness issue also. I'm going a little bit, again, more onto my risk management hat. So what we recommend that you do for that scenario is just be sure that you've got your contractor lined up to clean that stuff up for you. Because I'll tell you and be prepared to pay them and be prepared to negotiate with them if there's a big storm like Hurricane Irma, because we had people that couldn't get contractors for months and months to clean up their streets. Again, this is outside the insurance issue, but for disaster recovery purposes, we want you and your residents to be up and running. So, there may be some referrals we can help you with, or
Okay.
and that kind of.
Coverage for weapons discharge and things that you were talking about before, and for fire issues. That's for the entire town, or is that limited to certain places? I mean, I assume, what if our police chase somebody into Boca and there's an incident outside of our town limits?
So
How
there-
does that work?
There's there's two, so there's two issues here. One, I talked about the deadly weapon, active assailant. So that would be that would be on your, basically on this campus. So on your covered locations, if a third party came in with a gun and just started shooting people that were going to the library, for example.
Okay.
Okay, so that's there's no police involved in that. Now, there's another coverage called law enforcement liability that covers your police while they're on duty. Any liabilities associated with that. So if they're in Boca, it doesn't matter. That's very close. So that's a realistic scenario there.
Also going through this, I noticed that on one side of a page, they'd be talking about items that are covered, and then on the other side, it's exclusions, and they look pretty close to the same.
Yeah, that's
So,
insurance for you. That's why you need an
I don't
advocate.
understand that.
We, the insurance policies and, you know, their contracts, their legal contracts, they give you something and then they take it away.
Right.
And sometimes you get coverage and exclusions. So they're interesting, but that's the nature of an insurance policy.
I understand, but I guess my problem is I don't want to think I have coverage for something and then I don't have coverage. Because even if the price is less, if it's not going to be covered, then what am I paying for?
You're paying for that which is covered, and you have to look at the fine print of the contract,
Yeah, and I think we
which is
also,
agree with
always
that.
an
I
issue
would
with
agree with that.
insurance.
What I'm.
You're
looking at.
100% right.
and Michelle, can you focus on, so I think we're here to decide the current policy versus what you're proposing. Can you help us understand what's the difference in your proposal versus what we currently have? I mean,
Yeah.
isn't that kind of typical? Like, I think we're kind of scrutinizing the current proposal, but I'm not sure that everybody is clear on what our current policy is. It isn't our current policy, doesn't it have the same type of provisions?
It's similar, yes. And so if we want to,
Well, that's just a few of them. I have a few
Yeah, like on your
questions
next-
as well.
Yeah.
So let's
sure.
get into those. And you're right.
Absolutely.
It is it's what we have versus this approach.
Exactly, which I think is
So
very
let me get
similar.
into some of those. Deductibles.
yes,
I've always been of the mind that we should have very high deductibles to reduce the cost of the policy. And here we're going to, which is very nice, much lower deductibles, and we're getting a lower price, which is a double win. My question is, if we stay with the deductibles we have or even go higher in the deductibles, can we look at even greater savings?
I would say there's not going to be anything too great for this year. When you talk about higher deductibles, are you talking about $5,000? Are you talking about
Sure.
$250,000?
I'm talking about thousands of dollars.
Okay,
Example. Cyber liability. Let's say we went to $50,000 deductible. How much are we going to save?
so the cyber liability that's a program deductible. So there's not an option to go higher.
Okay, if we went to automobile, we went to a $5,000 or a $10,000 deductible, how much are we going to save?
Well, your total premium for the auto liability is $4,300, so not a whole lot.
I'm sorry?
It's $4,300, so not a whole lot. If you,
We would save $4,300.
the entire premium for all of your vehicles, you had 13 vehicles, is $4,300. So, you know, I mean, I don't know at what point you get a big dollar credit on that for the higher deductible, because there's just not a lot. of
Oh, really
premium.
talking about peanuts here.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any here that we can save if we go to higher deductibles? It's worthwhile?
Thank you. Yeah, my name's Kurt Heyman with.
Hi,
Preferred.
Kirk.
She's correct. The premium to begin with is not all that significant. So I think you almost would turn it where with no deductible is where you're going to save. If you had 2 or 3 or 4 claims, now you're going to have no deductible with us, but with your current program, you're going to have 1,000 per.
No, I get that. I'm looking, are there any places we can obviously afford a $2,000 or $3,000 deductible if there were some savings there, but from what Michelle is saying, that, you know, there isn't anything there that's worth going after. I'm asking you, are there anything in any other policies here where if we were to increase the deductible substantially, are we looking at a significant savings?
Well, you could look at your law enforcement liability. You could look at the public officials. I mean, we can go deductibles from 0 to 1,000, 5,000, 25,000.
Yeah, would you take a look for us? And if there's something there,
If it
give
makes-
Marshall a call. You don't have to do it right now, the next day or two, because we're very willing to take on some risk.
Sure, that makes sense.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Gotcha.
Second thing was D&O coverage. What is the D&O coverage currently and what is it under the revised?
The DNO, yes, that's public officials liability. So that's your coverage for wrongful acts. I think many of you maybe have served on board, so you're familiar with that. It's a must have.
So give that to me again, please.
It's the public officials liability.
Yes.
That's very similar to DNO coverage, but it's focused for governmental entities.
And what is it currently and what will it be?
So the way your current program does not break that out, there is a lump. And I can just give you, as far as the limit,
What are the limits?
I'm so sorry. I thought you were asking about premium. It's a $5 million limit.
Per occurrence?
Yes.
And that's the current policy.
That's
and
the
your
current
proposed
policy.
Current policy and our proposal, those limits are not aggregated. And the defense costs are outside the limit or in addition to the limit.
And is that the same as our current policy? It is.
Yes.
And then there is no deductible for that coverage?
That's
Is that
correct.
Yeah, that usually is. Well, that's insufficient. We need to take that up.
Yeah. So,
And is there an
We'll look at some
umbrella
options.
policy as well?
Well,
No.
can you
There is
explain?
no umbrella and the current is only 5 million?
that's correct.
That's wholly inadequate.
It
I-
might,
I guess I think what might help us too, is can you explain how a claimant could exceed or what is a likely winning? I don't know what you call it, a claim that someone could achieve against a public official. Maybe if you could explain that.
well,
That's a great question.
yeah, I have not seen anything near that in my career for governments in Florida. And you have to, our society, is changing a little bit. I feel like it's getting more and more litigious, so I appreciate
Oh, a big.
the concern there. But I will tell you from a benchmarking perspective, $5 million is really on the top high side. We really don't see too many with limits over 5 million, and a lot of municipalities will carry as little as 1. I have never been involved with or heard of a public official's case that has gone over policy limits.
I can tell you in condominiums, 5 million is very low.
Yes.
And
I would agree.
In my condo, ours is 25 million
Mhm.
through the umbrella.
Aren't there laws can you explain that?
So, so they're on tort liability. So there's Florida statute 768.28, which provides sovereign immunity protections to the town and also the elected officials and employees working for the town. And that limits liability to $200,000 per person and $300,000 per incident currently. for the
And so
firm.
how would someone be able to pierce that
Here,
300,000?
Glenn's going to jump in on this.
I think what she's hitting on is probably one reason why there's a difference in the condo world and the local government world is that there is this doctrine of sovereign immunity that protects towns and public officials. And there's different permutations of it. So for example, claims for defamation or libel are almost non-existent against public officials because the state has established absolute immunity, not just sovereign immunity, which has that 200,000, 300, but complete absolute immunity. So if you're sued, you can assert a defense early on to get out of the case. The exception is almost always the willful and wanton kind of standard. If someone made a statement that was way outside, or you took an act that was way outside your scope, and you see it more in the police world where, you have allegations that the use of force was beyond the norm, that you may have been reading about qualified immunity in the police world often, where officers have a different level of immunity. So I'm thinking that that's the reason that your premiums and your deductibles and the amount of coverage is different, because your risk of exposure is limited because of the state laws.
How about today with the building in South Florida falling?
Now you're talking about, for example, let's say contractual liability, and that most policies aren't going to cover. I'm assuming that your policies that you're talking about today will not cover, say, a breach of contract type of a claim. So, a Surfside collapse, that's dealing again with the private sector or the town, unless the town owned that's your property damage claim for town hall and, the library and your water plant, things like that.
But doesn't it eventually get to the town council for not enforcing building codes?
Again, you've got a pretty good body of case law in Florida that there's no obligation to enforce the codes. So you can, a lot of times you hear claims of, unequal enforcement or selective enforcement. Those claims rarely get anywhere because there's no obligation for towns to affirmatively take. Now, if you negligently enforce your codes, that's a different ballpark. If you send an inspector out there and they negligently do their job, then you have liability. But again, you have that 200,000, 300,000 tort liability cap. There are exceptions. To every rule, there's an exception. The exception in Florida is what's called a claims bill. So when you have a horrific situation, someone can go to after they've gone through generally a court process, and the jury awards $10 million against a municipality. They can only collect 200,000 or 300,000, depending on whether there's more than one person. But that person, that once they have their court judgment, can go to the legislature and ask the legislature to pass a law that mandates that local government to pay that excess amount or some portion of it. That does happen. It's relatively rare, but it does occasionally happen. I remember last year I don't remember which bill it was, but there was a bill that last year, some town had to pay an excess amount because the legislature determined that they should. So whether coverage would extend to something like that, I don't know. So if you felt more comfortable saying, give me a quote for 10 million, get the quote for the 10 million. It doesn't hurt, but I think she's giving you the good direction that you probably don't need it as a town as compared to a private citizen with assets that could be reached.
Got it. Thank you. You comfortable?
Yes, I am as much as I can be. I agree that the downside for us is definitely limited as opposed to in a private situation, which is a condo is a private situation. And I also don't think that we need to be overinsured. So unless you think there's going to be a situation where the town will be held liable for $10 million, which would be a pretty egregious breach.
Yes.
I don't think we need to cover for $10 million.
Okay.
You may want to cover for a little more.
Well,
just
we're
in
covered at
case.
5 million.
So I don't think that we would need more than that.
Okay. You comfortable?
I am comfortable, and I think what also makes me comfortable is to look to see what other towns have done. And it sounds like other towns do limits of $1 million. So I think that the 5 million makes me comfortable that, yeah, I don't want to be excessive, and yet I think we are much more than what other towns have done.
Yeah.
So, yes, I am comfortable.
I mean, I've pushed it about as far as I can push it. It's what it's sounding. Peggy, are you comfortable?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, now we just heard you.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I'm a minute out here. I'm comfortable. My concerns were asked by you, Mayor, concerning the deductibles, and by Commissioner David concerning the exclusions. The list of exclusions, I'm still not fully comfortable on. It just seemed like they contradicted the coverage. And, I don't want to go item by item here, but I'll look at them again as opposed to our other policy. I'm okay with all that everyone has said, but those still are like a lingering question to me.
Okay, so let's
Overall.
and let's take a look at the policy itself, at the
Okay,
coverage.
and then one more thing, Mayor, because I'm going in and out, so I'm in a place here where I've got some lines of, yes, the other point is I'm aware of our state laws, and as you know, I have a very good contact who is a highly regarded municipal attorney who Glenn knows, and the state laws cover the commission and our officials fairly well across the board. So that is less of a worry to me personally. And Surfside certainly brings a lot of these questions to mind. And if we, as with every disaster, there's an initial overreaction that is certainly warranted because emotions are involved, but I don't want to be overinsured either in that area or any others.
Okay, well, between what Glenn said and Michelle said,
Yes,
we're okay where we are.
right. I think that's what I'm saying. I think we are as well. Thank you.
I have a somewhat different question. You said you have appraisers come in to appraise the values of things, so that if they set the values and we insure to those values, but when a disaster hits, it costs more to do than those values, we get 100% of what it costs to replace, as opposed to if we set a lower value and the building was really worth more, so we set it for 25% less than the value. I understand, and I know mine, that I would only get 75% back. So I want to make sure that the values are set at such a level that we in fact are able to collect 100% of what we are entitled to collect.
Yeah, so the coverage for the property is a blanket replacement cost basis. And so you would have limits available to you of up to $26,299,456, which is the total value of all of your properties. So arguably, again, that would never happen, where you would have a total loss and everything wiped out. Again, we got a lot of other problems if that were to occur, but yeah, so it's blanket.
So when you talk replacement costs, that includes labor costs
Yes.
to rebuild, and not just the cost of materials and things of that nature.
Yes, and there's also some coverage, there's coverage built in for what's called increased cost of construction. And so you may find that there's additional code issues. If something happened to this building, you probably have to do a whole different window system here. That's going to cost you more. So that's built in as well.
And is there some provision that when labor costs go up, our coverage goes up to include that? Because you're not changing the values every year.
Well, not until your next policy.
Yeah.
The number's the number, unless you insure differently next time.
And actually our, the
Unless
appraisal
it's built
company,
in.
the appraisal company that we use does take into consideration what you're talking about is demand surge, because obviously we've got an exposure for demand surge in Florida.
Right.
And it did happen after Hurricane Irma.
Okay,
Okay.
all set. Well, thank you very much for
Well, I have
coming.
more questions. I do
Oh,
have more
shoot,
questions.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
I do. I just wanted to make sure we understood how the deductibles work. So I couldn't find the schedule of assets, but just for example, so let's take the library is a separate item on the schedule. Town hall is a separate item on the schedule. Let's say only the library is damaged, and it's $1 million, that's $1 million. And, let's say the town hall is $2 million. So 5% of the $1 million, is wiped out. Library is wiped out. So we have a deductible of 50,000. Sorry, it's not a good example. Let's say the library is only worth 400. And so it's wiped out. We've got a 5% deductible, which is 20,000, I believe. So, and none of our other, for whatever reason, none of our other property, our assets were damaged. I think the way that it would work is you would rebuild the library, but instead of having a $20,000 deductible, it's really a $25,000 deductible. It's not, and we don't have to meet the $1.3 million deductible. It's only it's only by schedule. So it's the 25, it's the 20,000 on the library. But because it doesn't meet the minimum, our retention is actually 25, not the 20. And even though our entire portfolio of assets is 26 million and 5% of that is 1.3, you only need to meet that deductible on each individual asset. Right. So we don't have to, because the library is 400,000. It's not like our minimum deductible is 1.3 million. We're going to get coverage for the library at a deductible of 25.
Yeah, I think a way maybe to look at it is we use in our term, it's the locations affected by loss.
Okay.
So if you've got 5 buildings and only 2 of them are affected by loss, you take the value of the 2 buildings times the 5%. So the
Okay.
wording really is those only affected by loss.
Okay.
We don't apply the deductible to the whole schedule.
Gotcha.
It's only those under loss.
Okay.
And that's why what we like to do is each and every building we show as a separate location.
Right.
Because sometimes we have large cities that have a water
Right.
plant for like $5 million, but they've got 10 buildings there.
Right.
So we're going to take those 10 buildings and show them individually because they might not all be affected.
Right.
Whereas if they were all lumped together,
Right.
you would have a 5%.
Then we
on
would
the
have
whole
that
amount.
issue. Right.
So it's really affected by loss. It's how the,
So it's really better to do a schedule like this
No
and have
question.
them each itemized. Can you tell us, okay, let's say we get hit by the hurricane. Can you tell us about the timing of when we could expect to receive the money? Because, a big concern of ours is we're trying to figure out how much cash we should keep on hand in the event of a disaster. And so we're concerned about the timing of the cash flows and, for these insurance coverages, when would we start to get some of the cash so that we could, pay for that? Can you describe for us how that works?
Yeah, and I've obviously experienced this too. If Preferred will advance money to you. So if we know that you have been wiped out and you need $500,000 or $1 million just to get contractors moving and all that stuff, then that money can be advanced to you. And it's a very quick turnaround. I have, again, I represent other companies in addition to Preferred. And so they have done a very good job of delivering the adjustment process in a timely manner and with the adequate resources that are needed following a storm.
And so let's say town hall is wiped out and we need to do something on a temporary basis? Is there coverage for that, or can you explain what that coverage is?
Yes, that's extra expense coverage. And we actually, I'm thinking of, I don't know if y'all are familiar with the city of Lighthouse Point. But that was one of my clients, and oh gosh, it was aging myself here. It might have been Wilma. They had some damage, and it took them like over a year to get the roofing contractor. They had a town hall with a library attached to it. And this ended up being the contractor's issue, but a storm came along and flooded the whole deal. Well, first of all, with the books, those got wet. And so, we paid for several processes before we replaced those, which include drying services. They had to move into the police department, which was fun for everyone, the administrative offices. But we also paid for a trailer for them to move into as well. And that was under the extra expense coverage.
And that was covered. So the
Yes.
insurance company pays, the town
Yes.
doesn't need to pay for that up front. Is it that the insurance company, like, I guess, can you confirm for me, or where can I see in the policy as far as like the timing of the cash flow, or what do you tell? I mean, I imagine I'm
Well,
not the only one that asked the question.
Yeah, as far as the cash flow goes, and again, that the coverage for the trailer, if you couldn't inhabit the town hall, is included under extra expense coverage, which is outlined. Yeah, it's $1 million. It's $1 million.
So we have up to $1 million
Up to $1 million.
if we have to get trailers or something to temporarily hold employees during the time that we are getting up and running or something like that.
And let me address your question about timing, because, I'll use Lighthouse Point again as an example. Well, they took like 2 or 3 years to get themselves moving. That was not our issue.
Right.
But we were right on top of that. Now, if you need to be able to turn in some kind of documentation about the loss. You will have field adjusters, boots on the ground, mobilized prior to any kind of big storm. They're going to be right here. But, you have the responsibility to document the losses. And if it's a catastrophe, please get details from your contractors, because you're going to need that for FEMA. But, the detailed invoices proving, we're having work done, or, the adjuster comes and says, I see that you have $1 million worth of work. I'm going to recommend an advance for you of $500,000. So that's kind of how that would work. And then if you get all your paperwork turned in, in 90 days, you're going to have a check in, I would say, 30 days max. I mean, if you have the documentation ready, or the request for an advance, it's been, documented, then it comes right away.
Okay. I have another question. So when I have gotten homeowners policy for my own personal life, whatever, sometimes I get a quote early on, and then I go with that insurance company, but then they adjust the premium later. And I don't know why, but I'll get a premium adjustment. Will there be any kind of premium adjustment? Is our premium the $286,000, assuming we keep all the same coverages as presented? Is that our premium for the year, or will there be any kind of adjustments, except for, I guess, payroll for workers' comp?
There's a workers' compensation final payroll audit at the end of the year. And that's, if everything at the city stays, or excuse me, the town stays the same, then that's price, except for the final premium audit on the workers' comp. Your liability is not adjusted, which I think may be adjusted now in your current program. So prefer to not do that. And then another.
No, the one thing I wonder, if you add locations, October 2nd, we're not going to charge you until the
Right.
following October.
Okay.
We used to, very honestly, we've done this 21 years. and, charge you the premium. And I think actually your current provider does that. But we finally came to where we pay for our reinsurance once a year, like
Okay.
in May before
Okay.
hurricane season. So
Okay.
if you build a new building in October, November for $500,000, normally insurance companies would send you a bill.
Right.
We do it because we work with 400 plus entities. We don't charge, and we kind of true it up the next year.
Okay.
So it's kind of a nice little
Yeah, that
benefit.
is. I
If you're
remember
adding
seeing that. Yep.
locations,
That
you
is
don't
nice.
really pay a premium when normally you would.
So are you relying on the appraisals for the value of the schedule of assets from our current policy? I guess.
Yes, but if we're successful to get you on board in October, we will right away, get you scheduled for an appraisal.
Okay.
We use a firm called Target, that's our Asset Works. And it won't be day one, but within probably 90 days
Okay.
roughly. Because even though we're accepting these, we want to go out and there's no charge for it. We're going to go and assess your building values and then apply them.
And it
Right.
won't change our premium.
Well, if they go up, then we would need to discuss that because you have blanket coverage. And really the beauty of blanket coverage is when you have a claim, you kind of disregards the individual values of each location. Like Michelle said, you're going to have 26 million. That means any combination of buildings, regardless if they're overinsured or
Okay.
underinsured,
Okay.
you have 26 million of coverage. If you didn't have blanket and you had a claim in a specific location, then it would be subject to the value that's shown,
Okay.
plus a co-insurance.
Yeah.
So you don't want blanket is obviously the best because then you're not going to probably lose $26 million. You could, but
Right.
in my many years of doing this,
Right.
I've never seen an entire schedule wiped out.
Yeah, that's a
So-
good nuance. I didn't fully understand until you explained it. And
Yeah.
that's what we currently have as well? Is that the same type of
I
coverage?
believe you have
It
blanket
is, okay.
coverage. So it's what you have now and you really want that coverage, but we would come out and do an appraisal.
Okay.
And if the values varied, and that's certainly negotiable. If you would disagree with the appraisal and you have your people that say, well, we're not sure it's worth that,
Okay.
we're open. We're not
Okay.
going to mandate, no, that's what it costs and you will pay premium. So there's some latitude there, if you
Okay.
will. Okay.
And are you aware of anyone who offers policies, insurance policies on debris removal? For the landscaping debris removal, that just is not something that is really insurable.
I'm gonna say, they did exist prior to Hurricane Andrew. They don't anymore.
I have a question. You were talking about coverage for our new fire department. I mean, obviously, it's not up and running at this point, so I would hope that you haven't included coverage for something that doesn't exist yet.
No,
That
we
it will
discussed
be-
that. And as we onboard employees, initially the first, the fire chief and maybe an administrative captain, they'll come in under an administrative capacity. They won't be doing fire and paramedics technical work yet.
Right.
And then once we get to implement, then it converts over to that more high risk, similar to police.
And also once the building.
Buildings up, then will
is
definitely be a
renovated,
different
then that
appraisal,
would
of
have
course.
to-
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we weren't going to pay for something that we're not going to have for 2 years.
Yeah, and also, if you add vehicles during the year, after the start of the fiscal year 10-1, you would not have a charge for those until the next fiscal year. So I love that because that's one of the things that I was a proponent of because of your budgeting process. I'm like, well, they don't,
Right.
they don't necessarily know,
Right.
when this stuff is coming on board or not. Sometimes the procurement and construction process takes longer or shorter than we expect. So that's a really good perk.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is there a benefit? So Priya is the broker for our flood policy.
Yes.
Is there a benefit of Priya overseeing our windstorm policy with respect to flood? So I think sometimes there can be confusion on what policy is triggered, whether it be a flood or a windstorm policy. Now, I know the flood is with another insurance company, and our windstorm would be with Preferred. So can you explain whether or not, what are the benefits?
Oh, absolutely. And again, I'm going to use Irma because I went through a lot of Irma claims myself, but we did have some situations that were questionable. And I'm not sure that the client on their own would have thought of, hey, we need to make a claim into both of these policies. And so I think there's a benefit simply from the administrative coordination perspective and to making sure that we're checking out everything you have to see if you have coverage somewhere. So that's going to happen automatically. We have a claims and flood specialist on our staff. That's all they do. And so we think it's that important.
Okay, we all good?
No, I have one more. So you mentioned something about a risk management team. So can you explain a little bit, would someone come in here and say, look at what we have and say, you could improve here by doing this, or can you explain that?
Well, there's several approaches. So each of the referred members is assigned a designated, I'm going to say risk control consultant. I think that's the best descriptive title. But these people are really highly qualified individuals, OSHA trainers, safety engineers, and all kinds of qualifications to come in. And they'll explain to you what resources are available, kind of talk to you and see where you are. So that can go anywhere from, let's really drill down on your claims and see where your claims are occurring. And I mean, to me, that's kind of the first step. Like, do you have an area there where you need to take, action, or we can suggest some action that could be taken from our resources, which could be, you really don't have you haven't updated your safety manual in 10 years. And we've got a template for that for you. That's legally vetted. We're very careful of this legal vetting for, anything that we're going to offer to you. And it could be, well, after you have, this type of claim where the librarian is lifting the returned books up off the shelf and there's a repeated, back issue. Well, we've got some videos that maybe you need to show to all your librarians, but they're streaming videos. So in the staff meeting, the library director can put this on the screen. It's 10 minutes long. They're very effective. They're very effective. And, we kind of got to the point where, oh, it's just a video, but that's how we do things these days. So for right now, the on-site training due to COVID is very, very limited.
Thank you.
I'm done.
You good?
And I
Okay,
have a comment also for the commissioner that was on the Zoom. I don't know if she's still with us.
sure, go right
She's
ahead.
with us. I just wanted to make a general statement about the exclusions that are listed in our proposal. If, for example, this might clear a couple of things up very quickly for you all, but if you look at, for example, the general liability exclusions page, so there's a whole, like you said, there's a whole page of them, bullet points, and it starts out with workers' compensation excluded, aircraft, auto, or watercraft excluded. One thing you need to pay attention to on the exclusions is what policy they're under. So many of these exclusions are excluding items that are not covered under that particular section of the policy. So under the general liability policy, auto liability is going to be excluded because it's covered under the auto liability section. So that hopefully makes a little bit of sense. Workers' comp, employer's liability is going to be excluded on everything but the workers' comp policy. So just maybe keep that in mind. And I will say that these are going to be these are going to be common and similar to what you have now. So there's nothing in here that that stands out to me that's, wow, this is a big one. You can get this coverage somewhere else, but I'm not providing it to you. There's none of those situations that I'm aware of.
And this whole package is under preferred, so you don't have that issue if you had an auto policy with one insurer and a workers' comp policy with another insurer. You
Right.
don't have, it's all under one insurer, so.
Yeah, it's pretty boilerplate stuff.
So with the media in the room, what is media wrongful act? So when Rich does something, is he covered by the press or?
That's under the section.
Yeah, got to be careful over there.
Yeah, that's, I think that really refers to something that's probably not necessarily applicable, that's typical in a cyber liability policy. So like media content, I guess you could be like, if you had a Cracker Jack IT group and they said, hey, City of Boca, I'm going to fix your website up for you. That could be a media liability because they're
Okay.
into website design.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. This has been very informative. And we thank you for putting all the time and effort in and bringing some additional muscle with you. Okay.
So
And a special thank you to Natasha for putting the time in and working through all these details. There's no question that we like the savings, but more importantly, we like the product. And you've done a heck of a job for us, and we really do appreciate it. We look forward to working with you in the future. I think we need a motion.
if you would like to move forward with approval, authorize me to sign these documents, or you can come in and sign all these documents with me.
We need two motions. We need one to accept this and second one, or unless we can add it on.
You can add it as one that you're authorizing the town manager to sign the new policy proposals with
You got it?
PRIA and
Tie them all together.
Government Trust.
I move that we accept the proposals for PRIA and authorize the town manager to sign the same.
Okay, we second. I guess we need verbal recognition. You do a roll call on it, please.
Commissioner David,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Hillman,
Yes.
Commissioner Gossick Sideman,
Yes.
motion carries 4-0.
Okay, thank you again for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have a
you so
safe trip
much. We
back.
really look forward to working with your group. Very exciting.
Likewise. Waiting for the door to close. Okay, it's just us now.
And the
Next
rest
on
of
the
them.
agenda is the town manager's evaluation for this past year. And I know we all have done our evaluations, and the feedback that I've gotten is that all of us think that Marshall's been doing a heck of a job this past year. So in his contract, he has a minimum 5% raise, maximum 10% raise. And I think, and I believe that since everybody is very pleased with the work that he has done this past year, that we should give him the maximum 10% raise. But in addition to that, when his contract was adjusted last year, there was no knowledge of our having a fire department. So all of this work on building a new fire department for our town is extra. It wasn't contemplated at the time. He's taken on the assignment and charged ahead. And obviously I've been working closely with him, and he's just doing one hell of a great job on it. But it is an expansion to his responsibility. And I believe he should be compensated for it, but not as a bonus, as an addition to his salary. Because once we do have the fire department operating in May of '24, he'll continue to have that responsibility. So he'll be having the ultimate responsibility to run the fire department. So it's not just building the department, it's managing it. So I would like to propose that in addition to his performance percentage increase, we raise his salary by $10,000. And that would be a one-time raise. So we would give him the 10% increase in salary for his performance this past year. And in addition, give him a $10,000 raise. That's my proposal. Open for discussion. Ellen,
I agree.
that was short and sweet.
It's when you have somebody who works well with the team here and with the commission, and it just seems to me that you reward people who do a good job. And that's, you want them to stay.
Yep.
So you reward them.
Natasha, your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely agree. When Marshall started with us, we contracted out our fire rescue, and I personally felt a lot more confident going out on our own, having Marshall as our town manager. I think it has been a significant challenge that was not anticipated at all when he considered the town of Highland Beach, and he absolutely needs to be compensated for it. And he's doing a phenomenal job. I think Glenn Joseph, who he brought on, is excellent. I think the strategy behind it, as far as with his ties to Boca and other things that he's done, will serve us well for a long time. Just excellent job all the way around. So I absolutely am in favor of the increase to the base and for the 10% increase.
Great. Peggy, we can't see you, but we can hear you.
Oh, yes, thank you so much. I beg to differ with your mayor very respectfully, but I did raise the issue in 2018 that the fire contract was, I believed, very suspect when they provided no financials with the true up. Marshall came on board a few months later. He looked at the financials the next year and he was interested, and he took a hard look. He looked at him the next year, and then you all came on board and we got rolling. And I'll tell you, I agree with Natasha and Commissioner David. I don't think we could have moved forward on this with any other town manager. My comments to Marshall a few weeks ago were, I don't think anyone else could have taken on this town and the job it needed done. I mean, whoever thought to inspect the sewage wastewater system? No one. I mean, I didn't even think of that. And I believe he's brought not only qualified, but highly regarded and highly professional people across the board in the building department, in our staffing. I don't know who could have tackled all of this. And I say 10,000 is, I wouldn't have mind going higher. I just don't think that we could be this successful as a town without Marshall at the helm. And you
Excellent.
all, and our staff. And I sent that memo to Marshall 2 days ago that I listened on my trip. I listened to all of the past meetings that I'd missed for charter review, FAB, planning board, et cetera. And I was just amazed how professional and excellent a job they all performed at that level. So I just have to, you need to give praise where it's due, not just because we're looking at salary review. It's really needs to be said that our staffing in our town is just on a wonderful roll. Thank you.
What is it that you disagreed with? We're all sitting here questioning.
Oh, I'm
what-
sorry. Just
what
you
you
said
do.
that no one brought up, no, sorry about that. No one brought up the fire before, but it's just that hearing about ambulances carrying, our Highland Beach ambulances carrying Delray Beach patients for a long, long time. And I questioned having to do a true up at 7 o'clock the night before our final budget meeting and having no financials attached for 2 years. And Marshall came in and he said, yes, you're right. That is very suspect. And he needs to be credited with taking that look.
Peg. You misunderstood what I said.
Okay.
What I was saying was that no one knew that we were going to do a fire department at that time.
Oh, absolutely. That's true. I'm sorry I misunderstood. It's different not being there.
Oh, totally. Okay, so
No,
we all agree?
I take that back, but we agree we couldn't be doing this and moving forward without Marshall and our staff.
Right on. Okay, we're all in agreement on this. Therefore,
Wonderful.
let's move forward on it. Marshall, do we need to make a motion here?
Yes, please. And thank you. It's
Okay.
very humble. Thank you.
You're welcome. You deserved it. Now, if we can get a little more work out of you next year. Okay, let's make a motion on it.
I move that we accept the mayor's proposal for the increases to Marshall's salary.
Second.
I second.
Of $10,000.
Of $10,000 one-time raise to the base and of a 10% increase based on performance.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well done. Okay, with that completed, we'll now move on to comments. We'll begin with Evelyn, if you have any.
Nothing.
Peggy, do you have any comments?
No, sir. Thank you for understanding. I couldn't be there. See you next time.
No problem. We're glad, though, that you could get on and join us.
Thanks so
Yeah.
much, Mayor. Thanks for everyone's work.
Natasha, any comments?
Only about the horrendous accident that we had in the Intracoastal. And maybe to just talk about, I know that the speed limits on the Intracoastal are not under our control at all. But I wonder if there's, or Marshall, are you going to touch on this in your report or?
There's no report for me today, but I will
No,
touch on it that,
I'll touch on it. I'll handle it.
oh, okay.
Okay, well
Okay.
then I guess I don't need to say anything more. I'll wait to
Yep.
hear what you have to say.
I got a note from Rick Greenwald. Marshall got copied on it. Marshall and I chatted about it,
From,
about the Intercoastal and about the terrible tragedy.
I didn't hear what you said. Who did you get the note
Dr.
from?
got a
Greenwald
note
sent an
from-
email yesterday.
from
I'll get you
Rick.
guys a copy today. We've been in meetings, but he yesterday gave us a thing and so.
Long story short, we all are aware that there have been 2 accidents, major accidents on the Intercoastal in the last roughly 3-4 months. And the most recent one, obviously, a terrible tragedy, a loss of life. And we think it's about time that we try to do something about it. Now, for years, people have tried to get all the various organizations above us in the rank order to reduce speed unsuccessfully. So we think that it might be time for us to start looking very, very seriously about adding a marine segment to the police department. That would mean getting a police boat and staffing it, obviously under chief. It wouldn't be out there 24/7. It wouldn't be out there every day. It would be out there on the busy days. It would probably be out there in the afternoons, maybe every afternoon. We have a lot of work to do on it. But we think it's time that we look seriously into it. We have to build a dock, find a place to dock it if there's somebody has space. Have to staff it, do the proper training, get the proper equipment. But it's time that we did something. It's just gotten to the point where people are going faster and faster. There are more people out there that don't realize that boats don't have brakes. You don't need a license to pilot a boat, and it's just getting worse and worse.
Is this something that we would discuss as a commission
Oh,
as to
it'll-
what the
we-
best solution is? Because I mean,
No,
I
We want to
mean,
put it on, we're going to put it on the next commission meeting to start a commission discussion.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not
'cause
saying
the-
we're doing it,
Right.
saying, but I believe it's time that we look seriously at it, see what's involved, see what the costs are, see how it would be managed if we did it. But
Yeah,
it's a commission discussion.
and maybe we could understand like what it would take to reduce this. To me, it's a speed issue. Or maybe it's both. I don't know.
I was
but-
just to add that I was going to say, we're going to add it to the 21st. Chief and I are going to make a presentation to you Chief has been doing a lot of heavy lifting with the FWC, seeing what their issues, constraints are, how we can work on twofold type thing. I'm going to try to bring a proposal where we implore the FWC to give another quick look at speed limits for us, because we keep, I think that the issue that the mayor was getting to is, it seems like every time we bang our heads against the FWC, they don't do anything.
The
So
problem
we
is,
can keep doing that, but there might be other strategies we may need to start pursuing in the meantime.
Right.
The safety of the community, personal property. Those type of
Problems-
things. We're going to talk about it on the 21st formally, of course.
problem is enforcement. There is a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit out there. It's not enforced. And people are reckless. Boats are getting bigger, boats are getting faster, holes are getting flatter. Goes on and on. So, but we need to talk about it. There may be another solution. Maybe we can partner more with Boca, more
Right.
with Del Rey. Maybe we can get some volunteers. Maybe we can get some people to contribute. You know, there's a lot of maybes. The answer is, tomorrow start doing our own thing.
Right.
There's a lot of
Right.
things to look into.
Right.
Like you were saying. But I'm sorry. Am I-
And actually, a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit is still pretty fast.
It is. I mean, to me,
I
it's
mean,
speed.
that's not
On a
a
boat,
no-wake
30
zone.
on a boat, 30 is fast.
30 is fast on a boat.
And I'm not saying we should give up. I mean, we're already starting the discussion, but I'm not saying we should give up trying to reduce the speed. But all I'm suggesting is for years, that has gone on to years. So maybe we still need to try, but we need a parallel effort. And even if it gets reduced, you have to have enforcement.
Well,
So,
And maybe combined with the accidents and the fatality and the fact that the manatees are being affected as well, maybe they'll finally do
Right.
something.
Right.
And
maybe,
help us,
but- but if they.
we can ask, but.
Let's
but you're right.
assume they do, and they say, you know what, you're right. We're going to reduce.
Mayor?
Still enforcement.
Yes.
Yeah.
But is it Highland Beach's responsibility to enforce it, or is it the organization?
Mayor,
Yes,
if I could clarify a few things that might help.
go right ahead.
Yes, I do know that I attended meetings, I don't know, 8 years ago or so where this was discussed. And we were told at the time then, and in terms of 2 years ago with a boat-related House bill, that the boating community and the boating manufacturers combined and the boating lobby is our strongest, how would you want to say, adversary in reducing speeds or patrolling. And at the time, it was clarified that the Army Corps owns and oversees the waterway, but the Florida Fish and Wildlife and DEP are the controlling people. And the patrol boats we see from Del Rey and Boca do not have, how would you say, full authority. They are, just supervising from their waterways. And so we have to take into account all of these organizations in doing so, and perhaps a petition would help. I mean, I know we have a discussion coming up, but it's a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. And when you're doing 35 in a boat, it's like doing 60 in a car. It's fast. One more point is that there are a lot of boat and jet ski rentals in Delray Beach, Boynton, Boca. There's one source, and an awful lot in Pompano and Hillsborough. And the people who rent boats, I'm not sure of the legalities of this. It's not my field, but I'm sure, I don't know what they're required to do to rent a boat. But if you're not Coast Guard, affiliated, having taken the Coast Guard course, you're not knowledgeable or know the waterway or been familiar or a tourist from another state. Just saying there are a lot of different factions we'll have to look at.
Just a
Peggy,
point about that.
I can tell you the requirement, a boat or any of those watercrafts, your credit card has to be able to go through the system.
Right.
Well,
Well, the
even if
state law
you
calls for,
are-
the state law calls for 14 years and under cannot operate a jet ski, but yet can operate a boat. And the Coast Guard class is required by at least one of these rental agencies I personally know of, but others, you're right, it's just a credit card. And that the problems we're having may not be we're not saying there are residents or Boca residents. They could be from elsewhere who just want a 5-hour fun day on a jet ski. So there's a lot to look at in this topic.
Peggy, one point.
Yes,
Because you are Coast Guard certified and took their course, doesn't mean you can operate a boat.
That's good.
right, I understand that.
Give you a practical exam. It is strictly a written exam, so you learn the laws. But if you're a bad driver, you're a bad driver.
Well, it's actually required in persons born after 1988.
Okay, we'll talk about it at the next session.
Yes, that'd be great. But we'll need to bring in those factors and the consideration of the boating lobby.
Agreed. Okay.
Thank you all.
At 3:03, unless, Marshall, did you have something?
Just, we've gotten a lot of information in the last few days. I'm going to try to package it up, get it to the commission, reach out to those people in the public that have said it to get everybody. So we could expect on the 21st, there might be some public that wants to participate in the discussion too, but
Sure.
this is good. I'm glad everybody's on the same page. We need to really take another look at this and see if there's a better long-term strategy for this community.
Yeah, it's a massive subject, not one that we're going to move on right away. But we're all cognizant of the problem. Okay, we will adjourn. It's 3:04. Thank you all.
Thank you.